Hi, welcome back to another episode of Two Tired Teachers. I'm Vinay.
And I'm Romy. Welcome back.
And again, we want to talk to you about some more of our fantastic educational pedagogy. Yeah, I just thought I'd throw some real lingo out there. Yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah. So today, in all seriousness, as you can tell, we've made it through our first 9 weeks, which I know everybody is probably in that same juncture in the school year. So at this point, you probably have some actual data in your classroom that you can really start to look at and decide where you want to go from here for the rest of the year until we all fall into that testing zone. So today we want to talk about small group instruction because that's one of the big pushes right now. If you are sitting in planning probably anywhere in the world, one of the things that you're talking about is what are you doing in small groups? How are you doing your small groups? What's the purpose of small groups? So we want to talk about small group and intervention on today because now that we have data, basically what the data is supposed to do is to help us decide how we're going to formulate our small group and our classes and how it's going to function going forward. So let's get a definition of intervention. Let's start with that.
Before we go there, 2 years ago, I think, the teachers that I work with, they had that big confusion of what is a small group, how we're using the small group. Is it the small group intervention the same as a workshop small group, the same as a station small group? So I had to do kind of preparation and a PD for them just to help them understand how the small groups are working. So first of all, you make the division between the groups based off what are you using the small group for. And that's straightforward. The workshop small group will be the one when you're using the small group to present the new knowledge. The intervention small group, as the name says, it's when you're using them as a intervention I was going to say method, but it's not a method, intervention practice. And you can include a small group and in rotation for stations, but you have to be very careful and very clear what exactly you want of that small group with stations.
And I think I would add in to what she's saying is for every specific building that you might be in, make sure you have a clear understanding of what your building's expectation is. And I think a lot of confusion comes around even that. So the powers that be that are working with you in your planning and want you to do these small groups, they need to be very clear so that if that's you, if you're the person that is over the planning, and you want your teachers to do some kind of small groups, you need to be very clear with what you want those small groups to look like. So is it going to be for intervention, or is it going to be more like a guided math thing where you're actually teaching the new content, or are we specifically using our small groups for reteach as an intervention kind of thing? But you have to be very clear in your building. And I think that's what a lot of problems that we have in different buildings is because nobody has a clear path as to what small groups are supposed to be. Now, am I saying there has to only be one in a building? No. Because depending upon the needs of your class, you may do a variation of all of those things. However, overall, there needs to be a clear path for teachers to know exactly what that's supposed to be in my room and exactly what this building calls small group or just what are we doing? There needs to be a clear path to let us know what are we doing.
Yeah. As Vinay said, it's the big confusion because you receive that you need to do a small group. okay, I'm doing a small group because I'm presenting the new knowledge as a part of guided reading or guided math, or it's part of workshop. But then turns out the intention was that the small group was for reteaching for the kids that you just have to help a little bit. But then it becomes an intervention in the same time. So very clearly, first of all, ask, what do you mean for small group? Then make a plan when and how you're going to use the small group. Are you going to start presenting the new knowledge in a small group as a guided method, or are you going to use those for reteaching, remediation, or as an intervention? So in this case, it's kind of separated, small group as a intervention groups. And yes, they do have a definition. It's an instruction intervention. An instruction intervention is a specific program of set of steps to help a student improve in an area of need. Students can have many different types of needs. Instructional interventions have some key elements. They're intentional, they're specific and formalized. They set up the way so the teacher in the school can monitor the progress of those students.
And one thing you really have to understand about this, and I know this can be an issue, especially if you're a new teacher and this is something new to you. These groups are fluid.
Yes.
They're not set in stone, because this kid may just need this day.
Yes.
To catch up or for it to click, and then they can move on and do whatever everybody else is doing. Whereas my tier 2, my tier 3 kids may be a continuous thing for them. All right. So you have to know who's my tier 1s, who's my tier 2s, who's my tier 3s, and we may talk about that a little bit in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But you have to know that these groups are fluid. They're not going to be the same. They may change week by week.
Yes.
It's possible that every couple of days you might figure out, okay, this kid does not need to be in this specific group if I'm doing intervention. They don't need this intervention for this specific concept. And then when you go to another concept, you may have a whole fresh set of kids that you have to intervene for that weren't any of the kids that you had before. So fluidity is a thing. These groups will be fluid, which means, as she said before, you have to be purposeful with them and you have to plan them.
And every time you look at these kind of groups, you have to think this is for particular weakness. It's not reteaching the whole lesson. It's not, you will have kids that need that, don't get me wrong. But if in the middle of teaching you realize that you have 3, 4, 5 kids that have some kind of background knowledge that is missing, and if you teach that part, everything else is up, then you're teaching for that weakness of the kids. They have to be very well thought, because majority of the times, like when I said, your kids will be changing constantly. It's not like a workshop group where you can actually present the new knowledge and it doesn't matter which kids are sitting in front of you. Those are specific, and once you address that issue and your kids moved on, the next one comes and it can be a completely different group of kids sitting in front of you. So the other one is the guided practice groups. And my favorite, Dr. Nikki Newton. Hi, doctor. The guided practice group are part of the workshop. They're the students learn in a small, flexible groups based on their readiness level. So it's kind of, you are differentiating the group the way that they're learning the same thing, but you're getting the kids that probably are already in the abstract situation, and you just go through the new knowledge and they will get on the wagon very fast. And then maybe the next group can be the ones that need a little bit more of help with materials or help to understand one or two components of whatever you're presenting. They are flexible groups, and they will be on the basis of their readiness.
And this type of grouping usually happens after you do some kind of whole group,
Yes.
kind of open instruction, like an introduction. So it would be like a whole group introduction, and then after that, I'm going to do the meat and potatoes at the table.
Yes.
So as each group comes to me, depending upon, like she said, if you do it by ability level, this group may need only this much more time, whereas the next group may need a few more meat and potatoes, and so forth and so on. But everybody is basically getting the same thing as they come through. So you may be teaching the exact same thing 5 times, or however many groups you have, but it may just be in different intensities. All right.
And exactly what they're using to teach the same thing. Okay, and then the students practice with the teacher, with each other. So it can be where your partners or your team work together, still part of the workshop group. And by themselves during the guided practice lesson. So when you're sitting with the kids up front and you're presenting the lesson, they will have a specific amount of time where they can work individually, and then you start asking the questions to the whole group. But they will have to have this little time where they're trying by themselves.
So you just have to think about it as just doing a whole group kind of session in a small group. It's basically the same thing.
Exactly. The groups that we have with after the famous mini lesson.
Right.
So that's the... Now, there is another small group that we usually don't talk about it, and those are the remediation small groups. Think about them like tutorials. Still small group. That's how it is, but you're using them for remediation. You tried everything else and it's not working, or there's specific knowledge that you need to work because it was not there since 2 or 3 levels before you, so nothing is going to happen forward. This kind of small group for remediation still applies. Now, benefits of guided practice groups. Student-centered. Number 1, student-centered. So with the usual, I don't want to say usual, the traditional method of where is the teacher saying everything, and then you have the guided practice where it goes with teacher and kids, and then the individual practice. Everything is teacher-led. In some way or form, it is, and it has to be, because that's the model that it's put in place. But when you have a guided practice groups, the teachers have to be ready for targeted teaching, for differentiation, of looking at the on-spot errors. So whatever is happening right there has to be fixed right there. The misconception analysis. So when you're listening at the kids, what they're answering to you, how they're doing that certain problem or whatever they're doing, you have to look at what kind of misconception is already there. So you have to work for that one. The focus is specific, which means you're working on specific thing that they need. It's not that you're going to explain the whole readiness standard of multiplication. No. You're working on specific thing. For example, you're multiplying 2 digits number by 1 digit number, and it's a specific step. Either it's a partial or area model or whatever it is. It's a specific work done on them, and it's based on the content and obviously practice. After you did this work, they practice with you in front of you. You took care of everything. Then they move to a practice after you.
Now, one thing you have to be clear about when you're with any of these groups, I know everything is generally fast-paced.
Oh, yeah.
we are teachers. We don't have a lot of time, but we have 1,000 papers that we have to grade every other day. You're taking stacks and stacks of paper home. And we know this. However, when you're grading these papers, and hopefully the papers that you're grading, you chose them to give a grade on them because you were looking for specific things. So this is the time that you do that analysis. So when you're grading it, rather than just, did they get A, B, C, and D, you have to actually look at what they actually did so that you can see what part of this concept are they missing. So then once you know what part, then I can group all those kids together that are missing that same issue, having that same issue with that concept. I'll group all of them together and we can target in on just that specific thing like she was talking about. Because it doesn't make sense, like she said, we did a whole paper of multiplication problems. And this group, everybody missed 6 of those problems out of 10. Well, yeah, that was over 50%. So yeah, that was not cool. So yes, they definitely need some more help. But I have to know in those group of kids, are they all missing the same thing? Otherwise, you're going to have to do 50 different things at your table with that small group. So you need to know specifically, these 2 kids, they're messing up on their addition computation of the partial products. Yes. These 2 kids don't understand when we're doing the area model how to decompose this number, or they don't understand place value. So they need to be in a different group than the ones that are only messing up with the computation. Computation is an easy fix.
Absolutely.
You know how to add. You're just not paying attention or lining your numbers up correctly. I can give you some grid paper. Boom, you're gone. But over here, when we're talking about place value and that kind of thing, I might need to pull out the place value blocks. I might need to pull out the place value map. And that's a whole different lesson. And you don't want to have 6 kids up here and all 6 of them need something different. You want to make sure that you kind of put your groups together where everybody is kind of on the same page, because otherwise you're going to be losing it.
Yes.
Because you're having to individualize for too many kids at one time.
And then you're sitting in a small group and then you realize that one of the students, it's, as when I said, very easy fix. It just probably one step that they don't realize or it's a missing fact that they don't have. It's an easy fix. I have seen kids that have problems with that, and you look and say, why is it incorrect? What is it? I know they have math facts behind them. I know they know what they're doing. And the only thing that they're messing up is that they're not lining up the numbers when they're adding. So there's a problem. They don't know which number with which number they're adding. But this one will have to wait for you a long time, and this is a small group. You're not spending the whole hour in it. A long time while you're addressing a situation with a kid where the place value is not there, which means they don't know anything about value of a digit, which means you have to go back on the amount and grouping of amounts. A whole other level of... So you try to get your kids together. So these kids need a deepened understanding of whatever we're looking, and these kids are easy fix. These kids probably somewhere in the middle, they're missing how to apply decomposing of numbers. So you have to think about how to do that with them. Is it just they don't know the structure of the numbers, or they don't know the place value of the numbers? And we're talking about math because obviously our partners have math.
I was about to say the same thing, but this fits for any concept.
For anyone. We have the same thing with reading and with science. Yeah. In my case with science, sometimes I have to separate my kids by experience. So I have kids, when we talk about we're going to a canyon and everything, they don't even know what it is. They have not had the opportunity to look it up, to go visit the Grand Canyon or whatever it is. So in this case, I have to think, okay, whatever I do, it's not going to work because they don't have the experience. So you have to start building the experience. Or I have to look in the science concept on vocabulary, and where there's a reading part. When we say crash, okay, My mind goes to a wave crash, the waves crashing on the rocks in the beach. For kids can be a car crash. So you have to figure out which part goes where and how it needs to be addressed. But it applies to any kind of small groups. You have to figure out what's the issue with the individual kids and then put them together.
Yeah. That was an excellent point about the experience level or what they've experienced in their life. And I can give an example. Yesterday was Arbor Day, and I have an ESL class and a Gen Ed class, and we had Arbor Day. Some guys come in from the Parks and Rec to talk to us about Arbor Day. Well, my ESL class, no clue. Yeah. They had never heard Arbor Day. They didn't know what a tree cookie was. They thought it was a literal cookie. Because the guys told them, after this presentation, we're going to give everybody tree cookies. They're all excited thinking it's going to be something they can eat. And they were showing them pictures of trees that change colors in the seasons. And they were showing them trees that were native to northern cities. And most of them are from Central and South America. Yeah, so they had no clue about these kind of trees. So they're trying to understand. Arbor Day was started in Nebraska with all this man who started Arbor Day there and planted all these trees. And they wanted to know, well, did it have what were they asking? Did it have mango trees? And did it have, those? Because that was their experience. And they weren't getting that, no, it had apple trees, but it didn't have those kind of trees. And we had to have a whole conversation about weather and just a whole bunch of things. So the experience piece of your students is very important. And we tend to make huge assumptions sometimes as teachers that they have the same experiences that we may have had, or that they have access to information or the wherewithal to go look stuff up if they don't know.
Oh, understanding.
So that's a whole nother session for another day. But it is something for you to take into account when you're doing your groups also.
Moving on. So here is how these different types of groups are the same. Okay. And I'm looking at papers because I decided to go a little bit more technical this time, so we don't have to have these misunderstandings again. So how they're the same, both guided practice and interventions are daily small group instruction that helps students develop proficient system of strategic actions. Okay, so they're daily occurrence, but I'm going to open the parentheses here. It does not mean that each day you have to have an intervention group and a small group workshop. No. You start with, so I'm going to work a guided shop. So in this case, everybody will be with you. Okay, and then you move on after you look at the work that they did individually, after you decide what it's missing, then you can do a intervention group. It's not that you're doing both groups at the same time. And I'm going to repeat what Vinay said. You have to look at the student work to figure out where you have to modify your teaching and which kids to group together based on what they are missing. Okay, so the next one. The purpose of both guided practice and intervention is to develop a deep understanding that blossoms into appreciation of the craft of reading and math. Expansion of thinking.
That's funny. I gotta go back.
Okay, go.
Blossom. It's so beautiful.
I know.
Blossoms
Sorry.
into a deep appreciation. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I got it straight from Fontes and Pina.
Yeah, I want to hear students say that. Oh, I have a deep appreciation now for. Go ahead. I'm done.
Okay, I'm just going to let go. Okay. Blossom into appreciation of the craft of reading and math. Expansion of thinking and increase enjoyment which goes for every year of school.
That was so beautifully written. Moving on.
Okay. What can I say? You see that majority of the times people that actually write about it, and this is Fontaine's and Pinel. Yeah, not written for people that, we need straightforward to tell.
Right. That
So,
actually do it and know
yes.
what's actually going to happen.
No. Okay, and the third component that it's exactly the same for the groups is that you're using some kind of assessment.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see where your kids are lacking. And when we say some kind of assessment, I say some kind of assessment, please do not think that I'm thinking about the benchmark, even though right here it says benchmark assessment. Mm-hmm. No. You can use your exit tickets. Yeah. You can use specific portion of your independent practice. You can use a specifically marked question in your guided practice. So you will see which part of whatever you're teaching the kids are not getting, because that's what the guided practice is. You look at the concept and you separate them in steps. There has to be some kind of assessment where you are not doing anything. It's on the kids to solve that part so you can see what's going on and where they're standing right now.
I think in this situation, benchmark simply means you have to have a way to see where they are now versus where they were before you start working with them in the group. Mm-hmm. So like she said, it doesn't have to be anything, it doesn't even have to be paper and pencil. It could simply be a conversation. Or, throw a problem out there and have them do it on the table. Write it on the table and let me watch what you do. Or, partner them up. Let them work through it, listen to the conversation, take notes from there. Because you're just simply trying to see, is what I'm doing right now with them in this small group working? And that's all you're trying to find out. So that is definitely your assessment.
So the other thing that I want to say about the small groups, it's a big misconception, specifically with the intervention groups. We think that intervention needs to be constant, but that's not right. Actually, the intervention groups are time framed, and it will depend of the time that it takes the kid to fix whatever you're trying to fix.
Yeah.
And it's done and it's gone. And then maybe you have a period of time where you really don't need any kind of intervention. Your kids are walking on the same level. We wish, But then again, you're presenting something and then you see that you have a group of kids that need that intervention. So in that case, again, slowly you have a specific amount of time. Intervention is not endless.
Right.
The other thing that I wanted to say is the materials that you're using for intervention are not the same materials that you use to teach. The same thing as reteaching, whatever you use for reteaching, it's not the same that you use for teaching, because there's no point of it.
Right, you did that already.
You did it already. It didn't work. It's not on their level, especially if it's an intervention group. Then you have to go back in the basics to build again the knowledge. Mm-hmm. So you cannot use the same thing for the different groups. And intervention, it's a supplemental for whatever you're doing in the classroom. Intervention, it's not, even though you try to build again, it's not just a fixing and putting a patch or whatever it is so they can go there. It's not intervention, it's a program, it's not a fix me situation. And I think we have a lot, I'm going to say that again, we actually, as a teachers in the classroom, we look at the intervention specialist sometimes like somebody that if we cannot do anything, they're the ones to work a miracle. Which majority of the time, the interventionists are close to miracle workers, because to get to that position, you are pretty much the best of the best, because you are already show that you know how to do that. But I think we're looking at that of, just take those that the behavior problems, the kids that are way behind, and everything. It's a way for us to take our problem students away from the classroom while we're working. My opinion, and I'm going to say that again, my opinion. Number one, the intervention specialist, it's the one that comes after me because I didn't know how to fix something. I did my best, and I did I put all of what I could, or all of that I read, and I tried new things, and I couldn't do it. So this is the step high for me, always has been that. And the interventionist is kind of help me please person. Mm. It's not the person that I will put my kids that are behavior problems, or the kids that you kind of made up in your mind that they cannot do anything, which is sad if you do that. Okay, there, I said it. And I have seen a lot of times that the interventionist is looked at the person that just worked out there. It's just a person that comes and takes my kids, or just comes and sits in my group. If you're doing that, please reconsider. In some occasion, we talked about the paraprofessionals and how we use the paraprofessionals. The interventionist is another person that we need to talk about how to work with them. They're the best of the best that you can have as a help in the classroom.
And I'll throw this out here at this juncture. At the end of the day, when you look at research, first instruction is what counts. Mm-hmm. So, before, every building doesn't have interventionists. Every school district doesn't have interventionists. So let's not feel like that's a thing for everybody, because everybody does not have the luxury of having that. So at first instruction is what is important. Always. Because that's what lays down the foundation. Whatever it is that you give to those students in the beginning, because we're assuming that they are missing information because maybe they weren't paying attention, or this or that or the other. But sometimes it's because we did not deliver it in a way that was palatable for them to understand it. So that's why first instruction is important. The better your first instruction is, the less you'll have to go back to reteach or have misconceptions. The misconceptions come from how it's presented to them based on their experience, and we don't want to own up to that, but it is the truth. I know for sure there are many times I had to go back the next day and say, look, I was wrong. The way that I showed you this, it was wrong. Let's not do that. We're going to do it this way, because I gave them the misconception that they had based on their experience as well as mine, or my delivery, I should say. Mm-hmm. So we do have to own up to the fact that however you present it, that's how they're going to take it. Yes. Now, granted, they've had however many teachers before them, but the same thing goes for that. Sometimes we have to clean up another teacher's misconceptions that they've put into the student because of the way they presented the information. So when talking about when you're talking about intervention specifically, some of the intervention we can knock down a couple of notches if we do a better job of presenting the information to start with. And that's what we need to be thinking about when we're planning our lessons from the beginning. And we did one on planning. We talked about that before. As you're preparing for your lesson, that's where purposeful planning. Don't email me and don't at me. That's where purposeful planning becomes really major and important, because you want to lay the groundwork that doesn't cause you to have all these groups.
Exactly.
You don't want to have a lot of intervention groups. So if you lay the groundwork, do a better job of laying the groundwork, then the least amount of groups you'll have to have.
Yes. Always.
Yeah, it took me a long time to get all that out, but yeah, that part.
Okay. So the time different for the groups. When you're talking about a small group as a workshop group, then the time frame will be between 15, stretching it very much to 25 minutes. That means that if each 15 minutes another group is coming with you and you're just presenting the new material. That's not the case of intervention group. Intervention group starts with a time frame at least 30 minutes and stretches to 45 minutes. So now here is where, when I presented that to the teachers, it was literally, you can hear the gasp, like, oh, so how do I do intervention group in the class? It's a planning time. It's a planning, and it's nothing else but organizing how your stations are going to work. That's it. So when you're doing a workshop, every 15 minutes, kids are coming to you. You're presenting a new knowledge, okay? The station that is immediately after you will never going to be occupied on the first rotation. So the first group that will go to that station will go after they're sitting with you. And that is the station where they're going to practice something of what you did there.
It'll be independent.
Yes, independent work. The other stations are review for whatever you did before that. So they do not work on something that you're presenting this day before they come to you. When it comes to intervention group, you usually do the intervention group, you have your stations set up, and they're working on something that they already know how to manage or have the skills to manage, and you are calling kids to come to you from the different groups, okay? So what I want to say is that usually you don't do the intervention group in the beginning with whatever you're presenting as a skill or whatever you're looking at. It's not going to happen on the first day or on the second day because you don't even have the data to look at the intervention group. So the intervention groups will always come later in whatever you're presenting, and once you have data, not just one exercise, but at least 2 or 3 that you have looked. And if you're working on exit tickets, you will have even more. So just be aware of how to set up your rotations in the classroom. If you're working on that, then this will be how you're going to manage your workshop groups and your small groups for intervention.
And I'm going to throw in there also that you have to also be cognizant of the age of your students.
True.
Because your younger students, you're probably not going to sit with them for 30 minutes in an intervention group. It's just not going to happen. Because the rest of your class will be bonkers. And you will be bonkers sitting there with them that long trying to do intervention. So you also have to be aware of the grade level that you're working with and tweak your time according to that.
Agreed. Literature says 30 minutes, and usually will go once you go up on the grade levels, yes. But if you're working with the little ones, absolutely, you're not going to sit for 30 minutes and doing 30 minutes intervention group with them. No.
All of y'all will be bouncing off the wall.
Yeah, but we all hope that the first instruction will be so good that you don't even need to do that.
There you go.
So it's what we're working. Now, if you're doing the slow release model, your intervention groups were always going to happen when the other kids are doing independent practice. That's it. And whatever the time for independent practice is when your intervention is going to happen. Obviously, I understand that you don't have 30 minutes of independent practice. We wish, but no, it's not happening.
Yeah.
So you will have to figure out on that specific time. Maybe you're working just with 2-3 kids, because interestingly enough, when we talk about grouping, we usually go for a small group, and that's how it's called, small group, because you have 4 to 5 kids.
Yeah.
But the extension of the small group goes up to 8 kids in the group. Obviously, if you're in the independent practice time, in other words, you do part of the lesson, 8 kids in 15 minutes, not going to happen. Don't know. So you will have to figure out how to structure. Maybe you take in 2 days and you call in one group and then the other group the next day. My point is that when you start working that, you planning it, when you plan for the week, you start to thinking where I'm going to put those intervention groups and how much of a time I'm going to take on them. And in the beginning of the year, of the week, when you're presenting week or whatever day comes with, when you're presenting a standard, your focus is of how long is going to be my mini lesson, so I can rotate almost the whole class through it.
Right. Most of this is planning. It's about planning.
It's about planning.
You just have to. I'm just going to keep throwing it out there because that's what everybody's using now. That purposeful planning. This is just going to have to be purposely planned. It's definitely not one of those things you can just walk in today and not having planned it and just do it on a whim. Because it will definitely be a circus in your room. So you definitely want to make sure that this is something that you planned out.
Yes, absolutely. And the other thing is, now you figure out the planning, you figure out which groups, which kids are going with which group, and everything kind of smoothly around. The last thing, specifically for intervention groups or for reteaching groups, if you have that, you need some kind of recording sheet so you can record whatever is happening in the small group. Okay, so you have this group and you make notes for the kids that are in the group. This kid is that, this kid has that. Sometimes you're going to notice specific things that you actually missed before that, and you need to address that. And then sometimes you're going to figure out that it's more of a, for example, reading level. It's not that they don't know, it's just the reading level is so, it's down, so they don't understand what they're supposed to do. But you will have to have some kind of recording for the small groups.
And when you do your recording form or whatever it is, don't think that it has to be a formal form or like one more thing I have to make. It could be as simple as if you have 6 people in your group, you have 6 sticky notes stuck on a clipboard or something, and you're just jotting stuff down on those sticky notes for that day, and then you put them somewhere where however you want to keep them. It doesn't have to be I have to create another form or go to PTP or TPT or whatever it is to find
TPT.
And find a form to pay for or whatever to download in order to do this. Because if you're like me, too many papers just get on my last nerve. So it's easier for me to jot my own notes down on a piece of notebook paper or a sticky note or something, and then I can put that wherever I need to put it, and I don't have to deal with a whole lot of extra paper as we're trying not to kill as many trees or have as many copies. We're trying to be paperless as much as possible. So don't feel like you have to go create a whole nother document for this. It could be however is comfortable for you to track what is being done in this group. So I think we're going to wrap it up there.
Yes.
And Rumi does have some good examples of some forms and schedules and that kind of thing.
Yes.
And we'll see if we can maybe attach it to this video so that you can see some of those things that she's created to work in these groups to keep you organized. And as we always say, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and drop them below or hit us up on email, Instagram, not so much. But
we'll get there. We'll get
definitely email, hit us up in the email or put a comment down below, and we will definitely get back with you if you have any questions or if you just want to share some information. Hit us up. And as always, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Two Tired Teachers.
Bye.